Okay, so welcome to this lesson, looking again at ICT future issues, and this one is a future issue, sort of. Well, regrettably, it's not that much of a future issue, is it? Because it's very, very relevant, very contemporary, as they say. That's because it's going to be looking at the coronavirus, Covid-19, and this track and trace technology. You might have heard about it on the news. We're going to looking into it in a lot more detail because it uses ICT to try and provide a solution to this pandemic. Well, maybe, trying to make it slightly less of a disaster than it already is. It's not going to solve the pandemic, but it might help bring it to an end. So we're going to look at exactly what it is. Right. So as usual with these lessons, there is a numeracy task and a literacy task on the front screen here. And the keyword today is, of course, track and trace. So let's get started. Right. What is it exactly? Well, it's a response to the global pandemic. Governments around the world are all trying different track and trace technologies. And what we've got here is that this one works using an app on your smartphone. What happens is basically, as you walk around, if you spend a significant period of time close to somebody else who has the app on their phone, your two phones will send each other a message just to sort of record that you two have been in close proximity. And therefore, if one of you has the virus, you might have spread it. So then, you go about your business, go about your daily lives, and should one of you end up getting coronavirus or the symptoms of coronavirus, you can tell your app, hey, I've got coronavirus. Your app will then use that information it's got to contact the other people and tell them that they might want to get themselves checked. Okay, this is the track and trace element. Because the idea is it tries to slow the growth of COVID. It's not going to stop you from getting it, but it might stop you from, it might stop the people that you've given it to from giving it to anybody else. The idea is to try and stop that spread as soon as it begins. Okay, slow that spread down. And if you can do that, if countries can do that, then eventually we'll get on top of this thing and life can go back to normal. So again, let's quickly look at how it works. If you come in contact with somebody, usually 15 minutes seems to be the standard set time that most of these apps are using. If you're close to someone 15 minutes, the two phones swap information, and then that allows you to contact them, like in this diagram here. If you become infected, you can send an alert to all those 4 people you've been in close contact with, and they can go get checked. Okay? That's the basics of it. Many countries around the world are trying to do this. Okay, United Kingdom, there's their example. United Arab Emirates, Australia, Singapore are doing it here. Singapore was one of the first countries to introduce it. United Kingdom are using their NHS, which stands for National Health Service. Remember, in the UK, health is provided by one giant organisation called the NHS that tries to look after everybody. So they are putting out this app here. Now we're going to look more closely at these different types of systems because there are 2 different ways of doing this. There's a centralized system, which is what the UK and their NHS is trying to do, and there's a decentralized system, which has been created by Apple and Google. So, right, try and follow me on this. Let's look at the centralized system first. What happens? Right. So, imagine you suddenly start to develop the symptoms of coronavirus. What you do is you turn on your app and you press the button that says, I think I've got coronavirus. Your phone will then gather together all the information for the people you've been close to. So if you have been close with 13 people, it will send details of those 13 people to the centralized database. So the NHS will sit there, there'll be someone or a group of people with a giant computer, giant database, where those 13 names will suddenly appear, like a live system, just update. You've got 13 people to contact. The NHS will then look at those people and send them all a message. So you keep walking around one day and you'll get a message on your phone that says, hello, this is the NHS. You have been near someone that has got coronavirus. Please go and get yourself checked too. Okay? So all that information is stored on one giant database. It doesn't send information to that database unless you click the button that says, I have coronavirus. If you don't get the symptoms, if you don't think you've got it, the information that your phone is collecting via Bluetooth is never shared. But once you've got it, it's shared centrally. That's the first system. The second system is the decentralized system made by Apple and Google. Now, Apple and Google obviously are huge rivals. Yeah, Apple makes iPhones. It uses the iOS operating system. And Google makes the Android operating system that is used by lots and lots of different phone makers around the world, people like Sony and Samsung. So to make their phones all work together on this joint system, they have made something called an API, which is an application programming interface, which allows the apps on the two different phones to talk to each other. Now, normally they wouldn't do this because they're different systems, but they can both talk to each other using this API. It's like a shared language. So it will let an Apple phone talk to a Google phone using the Bluetooth. So you're walking around and you've got your iPhone in your pocket, and you meet your friend who's got an Android phone. You're both running the decentralized track and trace app. You're sitting there, you go for a cup of coffee, you're having a chat, you're with each other for about half an hour. During that time, your phones will send each other a message via Bluetooth. You won't know it's done it. There'll be nothing appear on your screen that says it's been done, but in the background, your two phones will send each other a message. Now, that message is nothing more than a unique ID key. Okay, it's not connected to your name. It's not connected to your address. It's simply a unique number. There's no way anyone can use that number to link it back to you. But those numbers are stored on your on your phone. I say but because this is the exception. When you think you've got coronavirus, what you do is you press the button on your phone that says I've got coronavirus. It sends your number to a central database, but that database only will hold that number. It's a list of numbers of the people that have got coronavirus, okay? But there's no way of knowing who you are, just a list of random numbers. Everybody else's phone using this system is continuously checking that database. So say my number is 732, right? I'm just making up stuff now. Say my number is 732, and I go for a cup of coffee with my friend, and my number 732 is stored onto his phone. His phone is constantly checking the database to see if 732 appears on that list. If it'll check, not there, happy days. Check again, not there, happy days. Checks again, 732 now appears on the list of infected people. So he knows that he's been in proximity to someone that's got it. So then the app will alert my friend that he needs to go get checked. So they're two different systems. But as you can see, one allows a central organization or government to scoop all this information up. And the other one is decentralized, where the sort of contact data is all kept on people's phones. So it makes it very difficult for anyone to sort of keep an eye on you or to spy on you. So that's why some people prefer the Apple and Google API. In fact, that's actually one of the reasons Apple and Google made it. When this thing kicked off, Apple and Google were very frightened that governments around the world would suddenly use these tracing apps to spy on their people. So they created this API and gave it for free to every country in the world and said, hey, just use our system for free. Saves you a ton of cash. And the advantage for Apple and Google, as far as they're concerned, is that it means that governments cannot spy on their own people, which means the users of their products are not going to be spied on, okay? Which is obviously important for them, because who's going to buy an Apple or a Google phone if you think you're being spied on? Right, so here we go. Pluses and negatives, pluses and minuses, benefits and drawbacks for the both systems. Okay, you've got the UK centralized system on this side and the Apple Google decentralized on the other side. We've discussed a lot of these already, but let's quickly go through them, okay? United Kingdom, government can see who you've contacted, and this can help them manage healthcare resources. This is the big advantage of the UK system. It does allow a big organisation to track where this virus is breaking out, and so they can do a better job of managing it. Yeah, how much money do they spend on testing? Where should testing take place? Things like this. Okay. Updates to the system can be made quickly using the central database. So these are the good bits of the UK system. The bad bits is that your personal data is shared with the health authorities, and it might not be safe in that central database, and people can figure out who you've been talking to. The other downside to it is that if you're not using the Apple Google API, it means you've got to create one yourself. And to create one yourself, it's very difficult because only Apple and Google really know how their phones how they know how best to program their phones, obviously. So what we've found is that the UK version, people that aren't using the Apple and Google system, their APIs tend to operate in a different manner, which means they use more battery. So the battery life on your phone is not very good because the Bluetooth has to use a lot more energy. However, on the Apple and Google side, it's much more efficient, the Apple and Google system. So look at the Apple and Google system then. Your personal data is never shared, so your privacy is protected a lot more using Apple and Google. And the bad news is that it doesn't create a central database which a health authority could use, right? So it's, it comes down to what do you want? Do you want to share all this information with your government and hope that they can use that information to better tackle the crisis? Or do you just not trust that government and you'd rather keep that information to yourself so it doesn't spy on you and there's no aspect of it, no prospect of being spied on? Okay, so once you've read through those, I want you to have a quick think. Imagine now, this is your task. Imagine you are your country's health minister. Write a report recommending one of the 2 track and trace health systems. Okay, I've given you some sentence starters there to help you, and there is a challenge task for you to do there as well. When you finish that, there is a quiz online for you to do. Okay, follow the instructions on the PowerPoint to complete the quiz. I hope all of that makes sense. Let's go back on the summary, okay, just very quickly, because this is a bit confusing. 2 systems. Number 1, centralized. You get sick, you tell the government's central database you're sick and who you've been in contact with, the government then contacts them. The decentralized version, you get sick, you put a random number onto a database which everybody else's phones is constantly checking. The phone then informs that person to go get tested. Yeah, that's the difference. The government, you tell the government contacts them, your phones do the contacting. Okay, so there's no government involved. Government involved, no government involved. Okay, that's basically the big difference. Right, hope that makes sense.